In February of 1959, 9 experienced hikers set out on a winter expedition into the Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. They were young, strong, and highly trained. Every single one of them would die. What investigators found at their campsite shocked even seasoned Soviet officials. A tent cut open from the inside, footprints leading barefoot into the freezing wilderness, bodies scattered across the mountainside, and injuries that made no sense. To this day, the Dyatlov Pass Incident remains one of the most chilling unsolved mysteries in modern history. What really happened on that mountain? The group was led by a 23-year-old engineering student named Igor Dyatlov. Dyatlov and his team were part of the Ural Polytechnic Institute in what is now Russia. They were highly experienced hikers attempting a challenging expedition across the northern Ural Mountains. Their goal was to reach a mountain known as Otorten. The journey would cover hundreds of kilometers through remote wilderness. This wasn't just a casual hike. The expedition was classified as a Grade 3 trek, the highest level of difficulty available in the Soviet Union at the time. Every member of the team had extensive winter survival experience. These were not amateurs. The group originally consisted of 10 hikers, but shortly after the expedition began, one member turned back due to illness. His name was Yuri Yudin. That decision would save his life. The remaining 9 hikers continued deeper into the mountains. It would be the last time they were seen alive. On January the 31st, the hikers reached the slopes of a mountain called Kholat Shekel. The name translates to something eerie. In the language of the indigenous Mansi people, it means mountain of the dead. At the time, the hikers probably didn't think much of it. They pitched their tent on the exposed slope of the mountain and settled in for the night. But something happened that night. Something so terrifying that the hikers fled their tent in the middle of a brutal Siberian winter. Weeks later, when the group failed to return, a search party was organized. Friends, volunteers, and Soviet military units joined the effort. What they found would turn the expedition into a global mystery. The first discovery was the hikers' tent. It was partially buried in snow, but investigators noticed something strange immediately. The tent had been cut open from the inside. It appeared the hikers had slashed their way out instead of using the entrance. Why would experienced mountaineers do something like that? And why would they abandon their shelter in temperatures that could reach -30°C? Nearby, investigators found footprints leading away from the tent. The prints were calm and organized. They weren't running, but the hikers had left with almost nothing. Many of the footprints were barefoot. Some hikers wore only socks. Others had just a single shoe. The trail led down the mountain toward a nearby forest. About a kilometer away, searchers made their next horrifying discovery. 2 bodies. They were found beneath a large cedar tree. The hikers had tried to start a fire. Branches were broken up to 5 meters high, suggesting one of them had climbed the tree, possibly trying to see back toward the tent. Both bodies were dressed only in underwear. They had died of hypothermia. But the mystery was only beginning. Between the tree and the tent, 3 more bodies were found. They appeared to be attempting to return to the campsite. Their bodies were frozen in positions, suggesting they collapsed while crawling through the snow. It seemed like they were trying to make it back to their shelter, but they never made it. 5 of the 9 hikers had now been found. All had died from exposure to the freezing temperatures, but 4 hikers were still missing, and their discovery would make the case far stranger. Months later, when the snow finally melted, searchers discovered the remaining bodies in a nearby ravine. These 4 hikers were buried under several meters of snow, and their injuries were shocking. One had a crushed skull. Another had massive chest fractures, similar to what you might see in a high-speed car crash. But here's the strange part. There were no external wounds, no cuts, no bruises. It was as if an enormous force had crushed them internally. Even more disturbing, one of the victims was missing her tongue. Another was missing part of her eyes and lips. Investigators were baffled. The injuries didn't match an animal attack. They didn't match a fight. And there was no evidence of another group being present. But things got even stranger. When some of the hikers' clothing was tested, it showed unusually high levels of radiation. This discovery fueled rumors of secret Soviet military experiments. Was the group caught in some kind of classified weapons test? The Soviet Union was known to conduct experimental rocket launches and weapons trials in remote regions, but officials never confirmed anything. Over the decades, countless theories have tried to explain what happened that night. One theory suggests an avalanche forced the hikers to flee their tent, but many experts argue this is unlikely. The slope wasn't steep enough to produce a major avalanche, and the tent wasn't buried deeply enough in snow to support the idea. Another theory involves katabatic winds. These powerful winds can suddenly rush down mountain slopes at extreme speeds. If such winds hit the camp, the hikers might have panicked and evacuated the tent. But this still doesn't explain the severe internal injuries found on some of the bodies. Some people believe the hikers were victims of a secret Soviet military test, possibly involving experimental explosives or aerial mines. Witnesses in nearby villages reported seeing strange glowing orbs in the sky around the time of the incident. Could the hikers have been caught in the blast of an experimental weapon? Others suggest the group encountered a rare phenomenon known as infrasound. Certain wind patterns can create low-frequency vibrations that trigger intense feelings of panic or dread in humans. If this happened, the hikers might have fled their tent in a state of irrational terror. But again, the injuries remain difficult to explain. Then there are the more unusual theories. Some believe the hikers encountered a yeti or unknown creature. Others claim aliens were responsible. While these ideas are fascinating, there's no real evidence to support them. Still, the case continues to inspire speculation, partly because the Soviet government closed the investigation with a vague and mysterious statement. The official cause of death? An unknown compelling force. That was the entire explanation. No further details, no clear answers. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the case using modern investigative methods. After reviewing the evidence, they concluded the most likely cause was a small avalanche or slab avalanche. The theory suggests that a section of compacted snow collapsed onto the tent. Fearing a larger avalanche, the hikers cut their way out and fled the slope. Disoriented in the freezing darkness, they were unable to find their way back. Those who attempted to shelter in the ravine were crushed by falling snow. While this explanation solves some parts of the mystery, many experts remain unconvinced. Some details still don't add up, and many questions remain unanswered. More than 60 years later, the Dyatlov Pass Incident still captures the imagination of people around the world. 9 experienced hikers, a frozen mountain, and a night that ended in confusion, terror, and tragedy. Whatever truly happened on Kholat Shakhl may never be known, but the mystery of Dyatlov Pass remains one of the most haunting, unsolved events in modern history. And perhaps somewhere on that lonely mountain, the truth is still buried beneath the snow.